Hi everyone, now we're going to move on to working with proportions or equivalent fractions or equivalent ratios, whatever you want to call it, but the point is now we're getting into the problem solving, and this is probably one of the most important skills that we will cover in this course and certainly this unit. This has to do with the cross multiplying and dividing, and essentially it's where you need to solve for an unknown value. And I don't believe that the math is what tricks people here. Sometimes what tricks people is reading given information and actually figuring out what you need and how to set it up. And before I even get into an example, I'd like to show you a trick that I use. And if you would like to use it, I would highly recommend it. When I'm trying to solve unknown values, what I always do is I put an equal sign and I put two fraction lines on either side. Now you can tell already that we're going to be using cross multiplying and dividing. But what I think of is this side on the left is what I know. And this side on the right is what I want. And essentially what I mean by that is the side that I call the know side, that's information from the question that you will be given. What you want is this is the side where you're going to have an unknown value, your x per se, and something else. And look, it's going to become very, very easy as you use this, but my point is, if you use this template over and over and over, this process will become very repetitive. And like I said, this is going to be used throughout this course. So if you use this whole know side and my want side, I really think it's going to help you out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in motion for you using the example that's given. Now, of course, I can see that the solution is right here given to you, but I'm going to just do what I said. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go, okay, put my equal sign and my two fractions, and I have my know side and my want side. Now, in question A, which I'm reading right here, it says, how many milliliters of yellow ink, blah, 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 would it use? Now, here's what you have to really be careful with. It says yellow ink and white ink. So those are your two colors. Now let's go into the question and find out what is the ratio or the connection between yellow and ink. And it says right here, it says yellow ink to white ink is 3/1. Yellow ink to white ink is 3/1. That's my know information. I know it is 3 yellow, I put a little y there, to 1 white. So I put in those letters. Now, that's my know side. Now I do my want side. And the question says, how many milliliters, I'll just erase some of this here now. The question says, how many milliliters of yellow ink would he use if he used 500 milliliters of white ink? So you have to be very careful here now. It says 500 milliliters of white ink. If you follow the example I'm using here, you'll notice that the yellow is on the top on the left-hand side, and the white is on the bottom on the left-hand side. So if you follow that reasoning, that means the 500 milliliters of white ink should match and be on the bottom on the right-hand side. And the question says, how many milliliters of yellow ink? Well, that's your unknown. That's what you want. That's where your x goes. Now, as we covered a few lessons back, this is simply a cross multiply and divide situation. I kind of do my diagonals, and like I told you, it does not matter which way you go. In this case, I'll go 3 times 500. Now that gives me 1,500 equals, and we have 1 times x, which simply is 1x. Now, as you know, when we do algebra, we want to know what 1x, so we have solved this question. Now, a lot of people will just leave the answer right there and they go, it's 1,500. Be specific though here, everybody. When you answer the question, it's 1,500. First of all, it's milliliters of what color ink was it? I believe it was yellow ink. You always want to put it together like that. Okay. Now, using this, using my strategy, I'm going to move down here to B. Now, I'm going to do some erasing because it just makes our life easier. Now for B, what you have is probably different colors here. So they're talking about, for B it says, let's see, it says how many milliliters of red ink would be needed if you use 750 milliliters of yellow ink. So I start the process the same. I put my equal sign and my two fraction lines. So the connection we're looking for is red ink to yellow ink. So if we go back up to the question, we want to now find what is our connection between red ink and yellow ink. And you can see that right here. It says red ink to yellow ink. So on my no side, I have 2R, 2 red to 3 yellow. Now, if you go back to the question, you were given 750 milliliters of yellow ink. So on the right-hand side, we have to place that value in, and it stands to reason that it should go on the bottom because yellow was on the bottom on the left-hand side. So you go 750 yellow. Here's my x, or my unknown. It'll solve the red. Cross multiply and divide. Remember, it does not matter where you start. So I'll go 3 times x, this one. So you put 3x. 2 times 750 should be, if you double check, you can do it in your head or whatever you want to do. Just make sure you never blow the math, okay? Because that's going to make things a little bit tougher. That's 1,500. Now, as you know, we do not want 3 x's, we want 1 x. So as I told you before, you have to divide by the number in front of the x. That's divide by 3 on both sides. We now have 1 x, and it should work out to be 500 milliliters. Okay, so I would write a final sentence, and I'd say 500 milliliters. You gotta have your units of red ink. Okay, I hope you find this to be a repetitive process that's somewhat easy to follow. What I'll do is I will set up question number 1 for you here in the assignment below. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. So if you look then, it says a secretary types 55 words in 1 minute. How long will it take the secretary to type a 2,000 word report? Okay, so you have to think, you have a secretary, we know how much the person can type in 1 minute. Okay, so I always start at the same point. Before I even really read the question, I go, okay, well, equals something, something. Now, what do we know from this question? What I know is this. I know that the secretary types 55 words in 1 minute. That is our connection. That is our relationship. So I'm going to go 55 words in 1 minute. Okay, so this person types 55 words in 1 minute. The question then goes on to say, how long will it take the secretary to type a 2,000 word report? So now we're at 2,000 word report. Well, that should go on the top right. Why? Because words, so I'll try to put that in here before I confuse anyone. The reason I do that is because words were on top on the left, therefore they should be on top on the right. What goes in the bottom? That's our unknown. You do your cross multiply and divide, which I hope by now is becoming repetitive. And remember, it doesn't matter which order you go, so I'm going to have 55x. That's from multiplying 55 times x. And then you have to go 1 times 2,000, which gives you 2,000. And I hope by now you're realizing that, well, how do you solve this? What do you divide by? You have to divide by the value in front of the x, which means divide by 55. And x equals, so you just type it in your calculator, 2,000 divided by 55. It's a bit of a decimal, but we'll round it. We'll go 36. And now, what does that mean? Is that 36 words? Is it 36 minutes? So who knows? But if you follow the pattern, and allow me, I am going to write down here. This is what we had originally. It was 55 words for 1 minute. And what we did is we placed 2,000 words on the top right-hand side. It stands to reason that when our x was down here, the units match. And what I mean by that is, you see, It was words here and words here. Well, if it's minutes here, it should be minutes here. And so we solved our x value to be 36. And what I'm trying to tell you is, well, what unit is that? It must be 36 minutes. There you go. I hope that you find this procedure to be repetitive and straightforward. And if by chance, maybe I'm messing up, there's a whole bunch of practice with this that you can find anywhere, and your teacher could even provide you with more examples. But nonetheless, I like to think that anyone can follow this procedure, and I'll give you a chance to practice.